The Grand Assembly Hall stretched 3 kilometers into the violet sky of Nexus Prime, its crystalline walls humming with the voices of 10,000 species. Today, the Velcro's empire conquerors of 14 spiral arms, rulers of 100 billion souls, made their proclamation. High Chancellor Thexver stood at the central podium, his forearms spread wide, his voice amplified by quantum resonators that made the very air tremble. The primitive species of Sol 3 has refused our generous terms. They have mocked our traditions. They have declined subjugation. Therefore, by unanimous decree of the Imperial Council, we declare total war upon the humans. The chamber erupted in chittering approval, except for one corner, where a lone human sat in a plasteel chair that seemed too small for the cosmic theater around him. Marcus Cole, Earth's only delegate, didn't stand, didn't gasp. He reached into his jacket pocket, produced a cigarette and a worn lighter, and sparked it to life. The click echoed in the sudden, confused silence. 23 years ago, the Velcros first arrived in Sol System with 30 dreadnoughts, each the size of a small moon. They broadcast in 17,000 languages simultaneously. Surrender or be eradicated. Earth's governments panicked. The UN scrambled. But before they could respond, a transmission came from Mars from installations humanity wasn't supposed to know existed. "We've been monitoring you for 6 minutes, the voice said, flat and emotionless. "Leave our system. You have 1 hour. The Velcros laughed. They sent probe swarms toward Mars. The swarms never sent back data. They simply ceased to exist, deleted from reality by weapons that folded space into impossible geometries. The Velcro's fleet retreated, filing reports of anomalous defensive capabilities, but their pride demanded they save face. They invited Earth to join the Galactic Council not as equals, but as amusement. A backwater species with one neat trick. Marcus took a long drag, smoke curling between his lips like dragon's breath. Dexver stared at him, mandibles clicking in barely restrained fury. "You dare show such disrespect in this sacred chamber?" Marcus exhaled slowly, watching the smoke rise toward the vaulted ceiling. "Sacred chamber. Right. This where you decided to glass the Prithian homeworld for refusing to pay tribute. Or was that the conference room down the hall?" Gasps rippled through the assembly. The Prithians had been extinct for 2 centuries. Their genocide considered an unfortunate footnote in galactic history. Nobody spoke of it. Nobody dared. Marcus stood, and somehow the motion carried more weight than Nexver's four-armed grandstanding. He was shorter than most species here, built compact and scarred, with gray threading through his dark hair. He wore a simple black suit with no medals, no ornaments. He looked like he'd walked out of a bar fight and into a galactic tribunal without bothering to change. "You want to know what Earth's been doing the last 2 decades? Marcus asked, his voice conversational, almost bored. "We've been watching you. Learning, see. We're good at that, learning from predators. You thought Mars was our ace in the hole. Cute." He tapped Ash onto the pristine floor. "Mars was the warning shot. The thing you were supposed to pay attention to. But you were too busy throwing parties and conquering species that barely discovered fire." He walked toward the central podium, each footstep deliberate. Security drones hummed to life, targeting lasers, painting red dots on his chest. He ignored them. "We warned you once. We didn't warn you twice, because and here's the thing about humans. We don't give third chances." Deep in the Kuiper Belt, beyond the frozen edge of Sol System, something stirred. The ice giant KBO 7793, catalogued by Velcro scouts as a lifeless rock, split open like a blossoming flower. Beneath the frozen crust, humanity had carved hollows the size of continents. Inside those hollows, the Ghost Fleet waited. 5,000 warships. Each one smaller than the Velcro's dreadnoughts, but built with technologies scavenged, reverse-engineered, and perfected from a dozen alien derelicts found drifting in dark space. Their hulls were layered with quantum-locked armor that existed in superposition hit them, and the damage happened to a parallel universe instead. Their weapons didn't fire projectiles. They fired causality violations, bullets that reached their targets before they were fired. Missiles that struck from angles that didn't exist in 3-dimensional space. The fleet activated. In the assembly hall, every Velcro's datapad simultaneously displayed the same message. A simple set of coordinates. The location of the Velcro's third armada, the Empire's hammer, its unstoppable force, currently stationed in the Andros sector 300 light-years away. Dexver's eyes widened as updated data streamed in. The third armada was gone, not destroyed. Gone. 30,000 ships and 4 billion crew vanished in the span of 17 seconds. No debris, No distress signals. Just empty space where an armada had been. Marcus took another drag. That was us being polite. We teleported them into a pocket dimension. They're alive. Scared shitless. But alive. You've got 72 hours to withdraw from every contested system, release every subjugated species, and dissolve the Imperial Council. Or we start teleporting your planets instead. The chamber descended into chaos. Species that had been silent for centuries found their voices, some shouting support for humanity, others screaming for Marcus's immediate execution. The delegate from the Kresh Hives, a species that communicated through bioluminescent pulses, flashed a pattern that roughly translated to, "You're bluffing." No species develops that level of technology in 2 decades. Marcus smiled, the expression cold enough to frost the air. You're right. We didn't develop it in 2 decades. We've been developing it for 500 years. See, while you were busy conquering primitives, we were conquering physics. We built quantum computers that simulate entire universes in nanoseconds. We uploaded our best scientists into digital consciousness and gave them subjective millennia to solve problems. We cracked faster than light travel by making the universe think we were always at our destination. And we did it all in secret. Because the one thing humanity learned from history is that when you're weak, you hide. When you're strong, you still hide. Until someone pushes too far. The Velcros had rules of war, ancient and supposedly inviolable. When the 72 hours expired because of course the Empire refused to yield, humanity broke every single rule in the span of 6 hours. The Ghost Fleet materialized in orbit around Velcros Prime, the Empire's throne world, and shut down every power grid on the planet simultaneously. No bombardment, no death, just darkness. 70 billion Velcros, suddenly living in a pre-industrial society. Their technology rendered inert by electromagnetic pulses calibrated to scramble their specific neural architecture. In the Imperial Palace, Emperor Zinthros sat in the dark, his ceremonial armor weighing heavy on his carapace, and understood what it meant to be helpless. Across the galaxy, at every major Imperial stronghold, humanity delivered the same message. Battle stations fell silent. Fleets found their ships responding to human commands instead of their own. On the agri-world of Celtaris, where the Velcros maintained brutal labor camps, human operatives materialized inside the camp compounds and simply opened the gates. No weapons fired, no guards killed. The operatives just stood there, daring anyone to stop the prisoners from walking free. Most guards dropped their weapons and ran. Humanity's Black Ops team soldiers who'd been training in 4 times Earth gravity, whose reflexes were augmented by neural lace, who'd spent years learning to fight in environments that would kill unmodified humans, moved through Imperial territory like ghosts. They didn't conquer, they liberated. They didn't occupy, they dismantled. In the Grand Assembly Hall, Marcus sat in that same plasteel chair, cigarette nearly gone, and watched the data feeds with something like satisfaction. Beside him stood Lieutenant Yuki Chono, relation to anyone famous. Just a woman with black hair tied in a tight bun, and eyes that had seen things most humans couldn't imagine. She handed him a data pad. The Velcro's inner council is requesting negotiations. Marcus stubbed out his cigarette on the armrest. Tell them we'll negotiate when they've freed every slave, returned every stolen world, and put themselves on trial for war crimes. Until then, we're done talking. Yuki smiled. They're not going to like that. They weren't supposed to like it. The trial took place on Nexus Prime 3 months later. The Galactic Council, restructured and stripped of its imperial oversight, convened to witness something unprecedented. A former empire, prosecuted by its victims. Humans didn't demand blood. They demanded accountability. Every species that had suffered under Velcro's rule testified. The proceedings lasted for months. When it ended, the Velcro's empire no longer existed. In its place, a federation of equals, enforced by a security council that included Earth but only with veto power, not command. Humanity insisted on that. We're not here to rule you, Marcus told the assembly. We're here to make sure nobody rules anybody else. The treaties were signed in the same hall where war had been declared. New laws were drafted. No species could be subjugated. No world could be annexed without consent. No government could maintain weapons capable of planetary extinction. Enforcement would be handled by a coalition fleet, with human ships making up only 20% of the force. Earth didn't need more than that. Everyone knew what humanity was capable of now. The knowledge was more powerful than any weapon. Marcus stood to leave as the final signatures were rendered into quantum-locked contracts that couldn't be altered or broken. Representatives from 100 worlds wanted to thank him, to shake his hand, to offer alliances and trade agreements. He ignored them all, walked down the central aisle toward the exit, boots clicking on polished stone. At the threshold, he paused, reached into his pocket, pulled out his lighter and a fresh cigarette, lit it, took one long drag, then dropped it on the floor of the Galactic Hall, still burning, a small ember of defiance on sacred ground. "You know where to find us if you need us," he said without turning around. "But don't need us. That's the whole damn point." Behind him, the ember burned for a moment longer, then faded. Marcus Cole walked out into the alien sunlight, hands in his pockets, the weight of a war already forgotten on his shoulders. Earth didn't kneel. Earth didn't gloat. Earth just reminded the galaxy of an old truth. The most dangerous predator is the one you never see coming. And humanity had been coming for a very, very long time.